My sister mocked me into oblivion, so I became everything she pretended to be. Now let me tell you about my childhood, which wasn't a horror story in the traditional sense, but it had its own quiet kind of damage. My name is Jessica. I'm 34 now, and I've lived my whole life in the shadow of my older sister, Emily, who's 4 years older than me and has always been the golden child. Or the star, as my mom liked to call her. I was the spare child. That's not me being dramatic, that's how I felt. Like I was the understudy who no one really expected to step on stage. Emily, on the other hand, was everything they ever wanted in a daughter. She had this natural charisma, the kind of person everyone gravitates to. Beautiful, confident, straight-A student, cheerleader, you name it, she did it, and she did it flawlessly. There were photos of her winning awards, homecoming queen, graduation speeches framed and displayed in every corner of our house. And then there was me. I was shy. I was overweight. I didn't have many friends. I preferred books to parties and struggled with anxiety from a pretty young age. But instead of being met with understanding, I got comparisons. Constant ones. From everyone, our parents, extended family, even teachers. Why can't you be more like Emily? Emily never had a problem with math. Emily always had such nice handwriting. My mom used to say it like it was helpful, like she was giving me a roadmap to success, but all it did was dig the hole deeper. I wasn't Emily. I never could be. Emily didn't make it easier. She wasn't abusive, not in the classic sense. It was more like death by 1,000 cuts. Sarcastic jabs about how I dressed, jokes about my weight, snide comments when I tried to join conversations with her friend. She had this way of humiliating me with a smile on her face, like it was all in good fun, and if I got upset, I was just being too sensitive. And then there was the internet. God, the internet. Around middle school, when MySpace and Facebook started to become big, Emily thought it was hilarious to make fun of me online. She never tagged me directly, but the posts were obvious. Some people need to realize leggings aren't pants, with a laughing emoji on the same day I wore leggings to school. Or, when your sister tries to give fashion advice but still shops in the kids section at Target. That one got nearly 50 likes and a bunch of comments from her friends agreeing or piling on. She would screenshot our texts and post them when I tried to stand up for myself. And then I'd get DMs from her friends calling me a crybaby or worse. Our parents never stepped in. When I told my mom about one of the posts, she brushed it off. Emily's just teasing, sweetie. You need to toughen up. She's actually trying to help you. I remember sitting there, stomach twisting, wondering how mocking me publicly was supposed to be helpful. It's not like I was perfect either. I had moments where I lashed out. I slammed doors. I told her I hated her more than once. But it was like screaming into a vacuum. Nothing ever changed. I spent years trying to be invisible. I stopped showing them my report cards. I never brought friends over. I avoided family dinners whenever I could. And honestly, I started to believe them, that I was less than, that I was the one with the problem. I carried that into adulthood, into relationship, into jobs. I always felt like I had something to prove, like I was waiting for someone to tap me on the shoulder and say, "You're not supposed to be here." We meant to invite Emily. I went to therapy in my late 20s after a panic attack sent me to the ER. That's when I finally started unpacking all this. But it's still with me. Even now. Emily and I are still in contact, though it's minimal. She likes to pretend we're close, especially on social media. She'll post old pictures of us on National Siblings Day with some caption like, "Couldn't have asked for a better sister," when we haven't spoken more than a few words in months. She's a mom now, with 2 kids, and I wonder sometimes if she realizes how deeply she hurt me. But I don't ask. I don't bring it up. Part of me doesn't want to give her the chance to gaslight me again. And part of me just doesn't want to hear her say it was all in my head. So I want to tell you about the exact moment everything changed for me. I was 26 at the time, still living in the same city as my parents and seeing them fairly often. Holidays, birthdays, the occasional Sunday dinner. I hadn't really broken away from them yet, not emotionally anyway. Even after everything that happened growing up, part of me still hoped that one day they'd see me, really see me, as someone worth being proud of. And that maybe Emily, my sister, would finally stop treating me like a walking punchline. But that hope was just another form of denial. It was the middle of June, and we were invited to this outdoor party at one of our longtime family friends' house, the Parkers. They'd known my parents for over 20 years, and their daughter had been one of Emily's best friends in high school. It was a big gathering, probably 18 or 20 people. Parents, their adult kids, a couple of new spouses and plus ones. The usual backyard party vibe. Cold drinks, folding chairs, music coming from a Bluetooth speaker, burgers on the grill. I almost didn't go. I remember sitting in my car outside my apartment, staring at the dashboard for a solid 10 minutes, debating if I should even show up. I don't know what finally pushed me, but I told myself I wasn't going to hide anymore. I had bought this dress a week earlier. Dark green, sleeveless, fitted at the waist with a flowy skirt. It wasn't scandalous or anything, but it hugged me in the right places, and for once in my life, I actually liked what I saw in the mirror. I had been losing weight slowly, working out a few times a week, eating better, not because anyone told me to, but because I wanted to feel strong. I curled my hair that day, put on a little makeup, and for the first time maybe ever, I didn't hate how I looked. I felt good. Confident, even. When I arrived at the Parkers, I got a couple of compliments. Mrs. Parker hugged me and said I looked lovely, which nearly made me cry on the spot. I made a plate of food, found a seat in the shade, and actually started to enjoy myself for once. Then Emily walked in. She was wearing some kind of flowy white sundress that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread, and she made her usual grand entrance. Loud, full of inside jokes, air kisses, and overly dramatic laughs. She always knew how to hold a room. She spotted me sitting with a few people and came over with that look she gets, the one that always made my stomach drop even when I was a kid. That look that meant she was about to be funny at someone else's expense. Mine usually. She smiled and said, loud enough for everyone around to hear, "Oh my God, Jessica, is that a dress? I didn't even know you owned one that didn't double as a curtain." The laughter was immediate. Not from everyone, but enough that it echoed. I froze. My fork was halfway to my mouth, and I just sat there, trying to figure out if I'd misheard her. But no, she kept going. She pointed at my plate and said, "I guess this is the cheat day, huh? Don't worry, I read somewhere that green dresses burn calories." Another wave of laughter, even louder this time. I saw one of the guys try to cover his mouth with his hand. Someone else let out this snort laugh like it was the funniest thing they'd heard all week. I stood up slowly, heart hammering in my chest. I looked at my mom, who was standing nearby with a drink in her hand. She didn't say a word. Just gave me this tight smile like she was embarrassed for me, not for what Emily said, but for how I might react. I wanted to shrink, to disappear, to go back in time and not show up at all. But something inside me snapped. I didn't say anything. I wish I had some epic one-liner or dramatic walkout moment, but I didn't. I just left my plate on the table, turned around and walked back to my car. I didn't cry. Not then. I was shaking, hands clenched so tight on the steering wheel that my knuckles were white. But I didn't cry. I sat there for maybe 20 minutes, just breathing, replaying it over and over in my head. Her words, the laughter, the way no one stood up for me. That was the moment everything changed. That was when I decided I was done. Done playing the background character in my own life. Done letting Emily humiliate me. Done pretending my family would ever defend me or treat me like an equal. I went home, took off the dress, hung it carefully in my closet, and made a list. Not a dramatic, I'm going to reinvent myself overnight kind of list, but small, doable things. Things I had control over. Find a better job. Move out of the apartment near my parents. Go no contact with Emily for at least 6 months. Start therapy again. Keep going to the gym. And I stuck to it. That party, those awful 5 minutes, it was like something finally clicked in my brain. I couldn't change them, but I could change how much access they had to me. I could stop making space in my life for people who only ever tore me down. And so I did. So after that party when I was 26, the one where Emily humiliated me in front of nearly 20 people while I stood there feeling like a joke, something inside me shifted. It was like someone finally flipped a switch. I didn't want to be small anymore. I didn't want to keep living in a shadow or apologizing for taking up space. I went home from that night and didn't fall into the same familiar spiral. This time, I started moving forward. The first thing I did was start working on my health, not for anyone else, but because I needed to feel like I had control over something. I cut out all the crash diets and self-hating nonsense and started taking small, steady steps. I joined a gym, got a personal trainer, and actually showed up, 4 days a week, then 5. I walked more, drank more water, and slowly but surely started seeing changes in the mirror that matched what I was starting to feel on the inside. I lost over 60 pounds in the first year, and more importantly, I started feeling strong for the first time in my life. My style changed too. I started buying clothes that actually fit and flattered me instead of hiding in oversized cardigans and stretchy jeans. I learned what colors looked good on me, how to dress my body, how to do makeup in a way that made me feel polished, not disguised. I got my teeth fixed, invested in skincare, finally got the kind of haircut I used to think was only for other people. And yeah, it felt superficial at first, but looking in the mirror and liking who I saw? That was new, and it mattered. But the biggest change wasn't physical. It was how I showed up in the world. I stopped apologizing for speaking up. I stopped laughing off cruel jokes or brushing off disrespect like it didn't sting. I started setting boundaries. Real ones, and holding them, even when it pissed people off. Especially when it pissed people off. I learned that saying no didn't make me mean. It made me free. At the same time, I poured myself into my career. I had always been good at my job, marketing strategy, but I'd played small for years, too afraid to aim higher in case I failed. Not anymore. I started going after bigger clients, asking for raises, negotiating better contracts, and backing it all up with result. I built a name for myself as someone who could take struggling campaigns and turn them into profit machines. By the time I was 33, I had climbed my way into a senior director position at a fast-growing tech firm and brought in over $210,000 a year. Bonuses included. I had my own apartment, traveled when I wanted, bought the car I liked without asking anyone's opinion, and was in the best shape of my life physically, mentally, and financially. And Emily? Well, her life started to unravel in ways I never could have predicted. She had married young. Some high school sweetheart turned real estate broker, and for a while they were the golden couple. Matching Instagram outfits, holiday cards, the works. But behind the curated feed, things were breaking. Her marriage fell apart just before I turned 31. I only found out because our mom tried to guilt me into reaching out to support your sister during this difficult time. I didn't. Her career, too, wasn't what she made it out to be. She had bounced from one marketing firm to another, always blaming everyone else for her toxic work environments, but word started getting around that she was hard to work with. She was late to meetings, missed deadlines, took credit for other people's work. Her last job ended in some kind of HR scandal that I never got the full story on, but she went quiet online for a while afterward. No more selfies in the office, no more bragging about her amazing team. And her image, the perfect, polished, unbothered version of Emily she had built her entire identity around, was crumbling. People started to see through it. Friends she'd had since high school started distancing themselves. A few of them even reached out to me privately, not to stir up drama but to quietly say they were sorry. That they hadn't realized how bad she'd treated me until they saw how she turned on others too. Meanwhile, I kept building, kept growing, kept healing. It was never about revenge. I didn't do any of it for her or to prove something to anyone. But watching her fall apart while I was finally getting my life together? I won't lie. It felt like closure in a way I never thought I'd get. So it was about a year ago, maybe a little more, and I was attending this networking event hosted by a digital marketing collective in the city. It was one of those polished professional mixers. Keynote speakers, brand sponsors, catered snacks, a sleek rooftop venue, the works. I had been invited as part of a panel on data-driven branding strategies, and honestly, I was proud to be there. I had worked my way into that room with a lot of sweat, late nights, and no shortcuts. It felt good. What I didn't expect was to see Emily there. At first, I wasn't even sure it was her. She looked different, tired, thinner in a way that didn't look healthy, her hair kind of flat, her outfit trying hard to look sharp, but clearly dated. I spotted her hovering near the check-in table, looking out of place and unsure of where to go. It was surreal. For so many years she had been the one shining at events, while I stood on the sidelines pretending I didn't mind. But now, she was the one watching from the edge, and I was the one on stage. She saw me before I could decide whether to approach her. Her face froze for a second, like she hadn't prepared for the possibility that we'd run into each other in a professional setting where the power dynamic had flipped. She walked over slowly and we made polite small talk. I kept it cordial, professional, neutral. She complimented my panel, said she saw my name in the program, and was surprised. I just nodded and said thank you. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for, though I never thought it would actually happen. She asked for help. She started off kind of casually, saying she'd been between roles for a while, which I already knew was her way of saying she hadn't had a stable job in months. Then she admitted she wasn't sure how to navigate the modern job market. Her words, not mine. She didn't know what platforms to use, how to format her resume, how to tailor her experience. She even said, "You're lucky this stuff comes naturally to you," like my success had been some kind of accident rather than years of pushing through self-doubt and working 10 times harder just to prove I belonged. I didn't get angry. I didn't gloat. I just asked her what kind of roles she was looking for, and when it became clear she didn't really have an answer, I offered what I could. I told her about a few online resources, some job boards, some digital courses that could help refresh her skill set. I even sent her a list of free webinars on resume writing and LinkedIn optimization that I recommend to junior hires. I was professional. I was kind. But I didn't offer her a shortcut. I didn't send her a glowing recommendation for a job she wasn't qualified for. I didn't email my contacts and ask them to take a chance on her when she hadn't done the work. And I definitely didn't pretend she deserved something just because we shared DNA. That's when her tone shifted. She went from slightly embarrassed to defensive. She laughed kind of bitterly and said, "Wow. I guess you really are the polished executive now." I just looked at her. I didn't respond. She said, "I thought maybe you'd understand what it's like to be struggling." I told her calmly, "I do. That's exactly why I can't pretend there's a quick fix. If you want a job in this field now, you're going to have to start where everyone else does." She didn't take it well. Her face hardened, and she gave me this tight little smile before walking away. I watched her blend back into the crowd, clutching her coffee like a shield. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sad, honestly. Not for her exactly, but for the person she could have been if she hadn't spent so many years believing she didn't need to try. That was our last real conversation. She sent a single text a few days later, something vague like, "Thanks for the links I guess." But that was it. No apology. No reflection. Just more of the same deflection she'd mastered over the years. After the awkward run-in with Emily at that networking event, I thought maybe that would be the end of it. I had given her what I could: resources, links, advice, and I had done it without resentment, even after everything. But instead of moving on, she went straight to our parents. And that's when the real pressure campaign began. At first, it was subtle. My mom called me one evening, out of the blue. She said she had talked to Emily, and that she was concerned about her. That Emily was really struggling and it was so hard to watch. I said I understood, but reminded her gently that I had already tried to help. My mom paused and said, "Yes, but maybe you could do more. You've done so well for yourself. Maybe you've forgotten what it's like to need someone." That line hit me in a way I didn't expect. Not because it was true, but because it was exactly the kind of manipulation I used to fall for. The calls didn't stop. My dad chimed in too, in his usual quiet way. He didn't outright accuse me of anything, but there were comments like, "She's still your sister," and "Family doesn't turn their back when things get hard." I wanted to scream. These were the same people who had sat in silence for years while Emily tore me down, who never defended me, who never even acknowledged how much damage had been done. And now they wanted me to fix her life. I kept my boundaries, but it wasn't easy. Then the messages started. Emily texted me late one night, long paragraph after long paragraph, full of self-pity. She said she felt like a failure, that everyone was turning their backs on her, that no one understood how hard things had gotten. I didn't respond right away. The next morning, she followed up with another message, shorter this time. "I guess I shouldn't expect anything from you." That's when it shifted. Over the next few weeks, the tone of her messages swung wildly. One day she'd be pleading, talking about how hard life had been, asking why I was being so cold. The next day, she'd be accusing me of thinking I was better than her, calling me arrogant, saying I was just a spreadsheet with legs, and that my success meant nothing because I had no heart. One message actually said, "You've always been jealous of me, and now you think money makes you the better sister. It doesn't." I didn't reply to most of it. I knew there was nothing I could say that wouldn't be twisted into another attack. But the silence didn't make it stop. She sent voice notes, emails, even posted vague things online that I knew were about me, quotes about fake sisters, cold people, women who forget where they came from. And our parents kept calling, each time sounding more disappointed, like I was the one who had changed for the worse. It didn't matter that I had offered help. It didn't matter that I hadn't insulted her, hadn't brought up the years of mockery, hadn't reminded them all of the times I was humiliated while they looked the other way. All that mattered now was that Emily was struggling, and I wasn't, and that imbalance made them uncomfortable. So they decided I was the problem. It would be nice if the story ended at distance and boundaries, but it didn't. After the manipulation from my parents and the toxic messages from Emily, I thought I had weathered the worst of it. I thought the silence I'd kept was enough to protect what I'd built for myself. I was wrong. It started with whispers. People I knew from the industry, connections I had worked hard to build over the years, began acting differently. Not cold exactly, but careful. Conversations that used to flow easily became clipped. Invitations to networking dinners stopped coming. I told myself it was in my head, that I was overthinking. Until I wasn't. I had been in talks with a major firm for a senior executive role, something that would have elevated my career to the next level. The salary was over $280,000 a year, plus bonuses and equity. I'd made it through the interviews, the negotiations, even the final reference check. The hiring manager told me the offer was basically a formality. And then, nothing. Radio silence. 2 weeks later, someone I trusted reached out privately. She didn't want to get involved but said I needed to know what was being said behind my back. Emily had been contacting people, not directly tied to the hiring firm, but close enough to be heard. She had been telling people that I was difficult to work with, that I had a history of emotional instability, that I had burned bridges in past roles. She even told someone that I had stolen ideas from her back when we were both doing contract marketing work, which never happened. We'd never even worked on the same project. None of it was true. But in an industry where reputation is everything, a single doubt is enough to lose trust. I didn't get the job. They thanked me for my time and said they were going in another direction. No explanation. No follow-up. I sat in my apartment that night staring at my inbox, feeling this cold, hollow ache I hadn't felt since I was a kid. Not just because I had lost the job, but because I knew exactly why. My own sister had taken something from me again, only this time it wasn't just pride or peace. It was a future I had worked for. That was the end. I blocked her number, deleted every message, blocked her on every social platform, and then I did the same to my parents. I didn't give them a final warning or a dramatic send-off. I just erased them. I was done. There is no coming back from that kind of betrayal. Not for me. Not this time. After I cut contact with Emily and my parents, I honestly expected her to go silent. I figured that burning the last bridge would finally be enough to end the chaos. But I underestimated how far Emily would go when she realized she had no more control over me. She moved her campaign to the one place where she still had a following: social media. It started with vague, passive-aggressive posts. Nothing direct. Nothing that mentioned names. Just enough for people to fill in the blank. She wrote things like, "Funny how the people who pretend to be kind are the ones who stab you in the back," or, "Some family is only good at pretending, not supporting." There were captions about betrayal, about being abandoned during dark times, about how jealousy makes people show their true colors. She was fishing for sympathy. And at first, she got it. People commented with hearts and hugs and messages like, "Stay strong," and "They don't deserve you." But it didn't last. Not once people started digging. Old classmates, former coworkers, people who had known us growing up, people who had seen how she treated me for years. They began posting screenshots. From Facebook, from Twitter, from her long-forgotten Tumblr, posts where she made fun of me for being fat, for being awkward, for wearing hand-me-down clothes. One person posted an old thread where she described me as the human equivalent of a participation trophy. Another posted screenshots of comments she left on photos of me, mocking my outfits, calling me tragic. And the worst part? She couldn't delete it all fast enough. The internet doesn't forget. Once it was out, it spread fast. People who had once defended her started questioning everything. Her carefully curated image of the struggling sister wronged by her cold sibling started to fall apart. There were comment threads full of people asking why she'd ever post those things about her own sister. A few mutual friends even apologized to me publicly for ever believing her version of events. And still, she tried to spin it. She started claiming the posts were jokes, that we had that kind of sister banter, that everything was taken out of context. But no one was buying it anymore. Her follower count dropped. She lost 2 freelance clients I know of, one of whom emailed me privately to say they had no idea who she really was. Her attempt to publicly shame me ended up exposing the exact thing she'd spent years trying to cover up: who she really was when no one was watching. Emily's downfall didn't happen all at once. It wasn't some dramatic collapse in the middle of a room full of people. It was slower than that, quieter, piece by piece. I heard about it through people we both used to know, though I never asked. The updates just found their way to me, like the universe wanted to make sure I saw what happens when the mask finally slipped. After the social media backlash, her world started shrinking. Friends distanced themselves. Some unfollowed, some blocked, some just stopped replying. She tried to reach out to a few, but the replies were cold or non-existent. People she'd leaned on for years weren't picking up the phone anymore. And without that audience, the persona she'd built, the strong, vibrant, unshakable version of herself, started to fall apart too. Her freelance work dried up not long after that. Clients stopped coming. Word had gotten around, quietly but clearly. Her reputation wasn't just damaged, it was radioactive. In an industry where everything runs on word of mouth and trust, she had neither. She fell behind on rent. Got evicted from the trendy loft she used to post so many pictures from. For a while, she bounced between friends' couches. But even that didn't last. I heard someone kicked her out after 2 weeks because she refused to help around the house. She didn't have anywhere else to go. Our parents knew. That much I'm sure of. A mutual cousin told me Emily had shown up at their house once, crying, begging for a place to stay. But they said no. Said she had to figure it out. The same people who once made me feel like the villain for not saving her didn't lift a finger when the roles were reversed. They had washed their hands of her quietly, the way people do when they've run out of excuses and energy. And then, months after I had last heard from her, after everything that had happened, the manipulation, the insults, the sabotage, the public humiliation, she reached out. It was an email. Short. No subject line. No apology. Just one question. How did you change your life? That was it. No blame. No demands. Just those 6 words. I stared at it for a long time, not knowing how to respond. Or if I even should. After that email, the one where Emily asked how I changed my life, I didn't respond right away. I needed time. I wasn't sure if this was another manipulation, another trap wrapped in vulnerability, or if something had genuinely shifted. But about a week later, she sent another message. This time, it was different. She didn't make excuses. She didn't try to justify the years of bullying, the sabotage, the guilt trips, or the public smear campaign. She didn't even mention our parents. She just wrote, "I know I hurt you. I know I destroyed trust that I didn't deserve to have in the first place. I don't expect forgiveness, and I don't want anything from you except a little guidance. I can't keep pretending I didn't ruin everything." I did. For the first time, she admitted everything. She didn't downplay it. She didn't sugarcoat it. She called herself out, her arrogance, her jealousy, the way she leaned on being the favorite for so long that she never learned how to grow. She said she was tired of failing, tired of trying to fake strength. And she didn't ask for help. She asked for advice. That made the difference. I replied the next day. I was direct and clear. I told her I wouldn't give her money. I wouldn't give her names, or job contacts, or any kind of shortcut. I wouldn't open doors for her that I had bled to get through myself. But I would support her in one way, through information. I'd tell her what books helped me rebuild my confidence. I'd send her links to the job boards and training programs I'd used when I didn't know where to start. I told her what courses were worth taking, what habits had helped me, what to avoid. I reminded her it would take time, that there were no guarantees, and that she'd have to sit with discomfort for a long while before she'd feel anything like progress. She didn't argue. She didn't get defensive. She just said, "Okay. I'll take it." And that's where we left it. Not as sisters, not yet. But as 2 people who finally saw each other clearly. After that email where I laid out my boundaries, I honestly expected Emily to either disappear again or lash out the way she always had when things didn't go her way. But for once, she didn't. She followed through. The first thing I sent her was a link to a simple book I had read years ago, one that focused entirely on personal responsibility. No self-help fluff, no fake positivity. Just a clear breakdown of how to stop blaming the world and start owning your decisions. I didn't know if she'd even open it. But she did. She finished it in 3 days. She didn't flood me with her reactions or try to extract praise. She just sent me a short message that said, "That was hard to read. But I needed it." That was the beginning. Next, she asked if I could point her toward a free course, something basic, something to get her started. I sent her a link to an introductory marketing certification. The same one I had taken when I was trying to reframe my own understanding of the field. A few weeks later, she completed it. Then another. She didn't rush. She didn't overpromise. She just kept going, step by step. She didn't ask me for anything else. No money. No favors. No connections. And, maybe most importantly, no manipulation. There were no guilt trips, no veiled jabs, no sudden changes in tone. Every few weeks, she would check in. Not to brag or seek validation, but just to say what she had done. What she had learned. What she was trying next. I didn't tell her I was proud of her. Not yet. That wasn't what this was about. But I noticed. And for the first time in my entire life, I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, real change was possible. About 6 months after Emily started taking responsibility for her own life, she landed her first real job in her new field. It wasn't glamorous or high profile, and it didn't come with any big title, but it was real. A full-time position with a modest marketing firm that took a chance on entry-level applicants who were willing to learn. Her starting salary was $55,000 a year. She didn't brag about it. She just let me know quietly that she got the offer, that she'd accepted it, and that she was nervous but ready to work. It was the first time I ever saw her treat success like something earned rather than expected. And almost immediately, like clockwork, our parents reappeared. They didn't congratulate her or ask how the job search had gone. They contacted me. First my mom, then my dad, each pushing the same message. Emily had changed, she was trying, and now that she had something stable, it was time for me to let the past go. I needed to forgive. I needed to help. I needed to be the bigger person. I said no. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I didn't explain myself again. I had already given what I was willing to give. I made it clear that Emily's growth was her own, and that if they were only proud of her now because of a paycheck, then they were still missing the point entirely. But what happened next was something I never saw coming. For the first time in her life, Emily didn't take their side. She called them out. She told them, clearly and without hesitation, that she didn't want to be rescued. That she didn't need anyone speaking on her behalf. That she had gotten herself into the mess, and she was going to climb out of it without using me as a crutch. She told them she respected my boundaries, and didn't want me pulled back into the family dynamic that had nearly destroyed both of us. And then she went quiet again. Not out of anger. Not out of shame. But because, for once, she was too busy doing the work to worry about appearances. A few months after Emily started her new job, we met up for coffee. It wasn't a big, emotional reunion. There were no hugs, no tears, no dramatic scene in the middle of a cafe. It was just two adults sitting across from each other, sipping bitter coffee and talking like we hadn't in years. For the first time in a very long time, there was no tension in the air. No defensiveness. No underlying resentment trying to claw its way into the conversation. We didn't talk about the past at first. We talked about work, about how different the industry looked from the inside, about long commutes and annoying team meetings. We talked like coworkers might talk, not sisters. But eventually, she looked down at her cup, then back up at me, and said something I never thought I'd hear from her. I was horrible to you. That was it. No qualifications. No, but I was going through things. No, I didn't mean it. No tears to manipulate the moment. She said it as a fact. A clear, unflinching statement. And then she added, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to stop pretending I wasn't. I nodded. I didn't say anything for a long time. I didn't need to. That moment was enough. She didn't ask to be absolved. She didn't try to be anything other than accountable. It wasn't about rebuilding closeness. It was about ending the cycle. We didn't suddenly become best friends. We didn't start texting every day or calling each other for advice. But something else happened, something better, in a way. The toxicity disappeared. The bitterness that used to sit between us like a third person at the table was finally gone. What replaced it wasn't intimacy. It was respect. And that was more than enough. So here's where things stand now. Emily and I aren't enemies anymore. But we're not friends either. We don't confide in each other. We don't spend holidays together. There are no inside jokes, no shared group chats, no plans to rebuild something that probably never existed in the first place. What we have now is something quieter. Simple. Neutral. We coexist. If we run into each other, it's polite. Respectful. If one of us sends a message, it gets a reply. There's no heat behind the words anymore, no bitterness or tension. It's not closeness. But it's not conflict either. And for me, that's enough. For the first time in my life, I feel free. There's nothing left to prove. No imaginary scoreboard. No hidden audience waiting to decide who won the comparison. I'm not fighting to be heard. I'm not shrinking to avoid being noticed. I don't wake up wondering what version of myself I need to be to make someone else comfortable. I'm just me. And that's enough. For the first time, I am valued, for who I am, not for how well I perform or how quietly I survive someone else's spotlight. For the first time, I don't feel like a spare.